The name of the chapter: From Hunting Gathering to Growing Food. So, as we see in every chapter starting, there is a story which has few concepts which are we going to study in this chapter. So, I'll read it out. Tushar's train journey. Tushar was going from Delhi to Chennai for his cousin's wedding. They were traveling by train and he had managed to squeeze into the window seat. His nose glued to the glass pane as he watched trees and houses fly past. His uncle tapped his shoulder and said, "Do you know that trains were first used about 150 years ago and that people began using buses a few decades later?" Tushar wondered, when people couldn't travel quickly from one place to another, did they spend their entire lives wherever they were born? So in the story, Tushar was traveling to Chennai in a train and he was sitting on a window seat and watching trees and houses fly. At the time, uncle said him, "Do you know, Tushar, that trains were started of about 150 years ago and people have started using buses only few decades later?" So by hearing this, Tushar wondered and started to think that when people couldn't travel quickly, there were no ways for that. So they used to spend their entire lives wherever they were born. So answer is not quite. So as we go forward in this chapter, we'll get an answer for this question. So the first point of chapter, the earliest people, why were they on the move? So the hunter gatherers, skill gatherers, as we have learned in the last chapter. So why they were on the move? Why they used to travel from one place to another? We'll study. We know about people who lived in the subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago. Today we describe them as hunter gatherers. The name comes from the way in which they got their food. So, as we have seen in last chapter, that we know about people living in subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago, and we used to describe them as hunter gatherers or skill gatherers. So, the name hunter gatherer or skill gatherer comes from the way in which they got their food. They used to gather their food from the forest produce. Generally, they hunted wild animals, caught fish and birds, gathered fruits, roots, nuts, seeds, leaves, stalks, and eggs. So, this way in which they got their food is the main reason why they are called as hunter gatherers or skilled gatherers. Hunter gatherers moved from place to place. There are many reasons for this. So hunter gatherers used to move from one place to another. So we are going to learn reasons for this. There are as many as four reasons for that. Firstly, if they had stayed at one place for a long time, they would have eaten up all the available plant and animal resources. Therefore, they would have had to go elsewhere in search of food. So, first reason is that if hunter gatherers had stayed in one place for a long time, for considering 4 or 5 years, so they would have eaten up all the available plant and animal resources in that area, and there would be no amount of food available for them to eat in future. So therefore, they would have had to go elsewhere in search of food. Second reason, animals move from place to place either in search of smaller prey or in the case of deers and wild cattle, in search of grass and leaves. That is why those who hunted them had to follow their movements. So, secondly, as we've seen in first reason, that people started to move from one place to another in search of food. Similarly, animals used to move from one place to another in search of prey, deer, cattle, or in search of grass and leaves. And similarly, then the people, hunter gatherers who hunted animals, also had to follow their movements as they were also the food which was used by hunter gatherers to eat. Third, plants and trees bear fruit in different seasons. So people may have moved from season to season in search of different kinds of plants. So as you all know, like mango tree bears fruit in summer season, and we don't get mango as a fruit to eat in a winter season or rainy season. It is mainly a seasonal fruit which comes in a summer season. So there are many fruits which have their typical seasons in which they grow. So similarly, the people have to move from season to season in search of different kinds of plants as they were dependent on the trees and plants for their food. Fourth, people, plants, and animals need water to survive. Water is found in lakes, streams, and rivers. While many rivers and lakes are perennial, others are seasonal. People living on their banks would have had to go in search of water during the dry season. So, as we all know that people, plants, and animals need water to survive. Water is found in lakes, streams, and rivers. So, while many rivers and lakes are perennial or they are seasonal. So, perennial are the rivers which have water throughout the year, and seasonal are the rivers which don't have water or get dry up during the dry seasons like summer. So, the people living on the banks of a seasonal river, they had to go in the search of water to different places during the dry seasons like winter and summer. These are the four reasons for this. Second point, how do we know about these people? Archaeologists have found some of the things hunter gatherers made and used. It is likely that people made and used tools of stone, wood, and bone, of which stone tools have survived best. So, as we have studied in last chapter, that archaeologists in various ways have found the evidences of past. So, they have found some things, tools which were used by hunter and gatherers. So, it is likely that people in those times made and used tools of stone, wood, and bone, of which stone tools have survived the best. So, it is likely that the stone tools made and used by those people during time were mainly made up of stone, wood, and bone, of which stone tools have survived the best. So from this among these three types, stone tools have survived the best and for a longer time. So many of you are thinking about a question that why stone tools survive the best. So the reason is that stones survive very well in their natural conditions for a long period of time. They do not break easily, nor they corrode easily. That's why the stone tools have survived for millions of years and for a longer time. Some of these stone tools were used to cut meat and bone, scrape bark from trees and hides, chop fruits and roots. Some may have been attached to handles of bone or wood to make spears and arrows for hunting. So these are the uses of stone tools. So like they were first is they used to cut meat and bone. Second, to scrape bark from trees, to scrape bark from animal skins, to scrape hide from animal skins, to chop fruits and roots. And some stones were also tools were also attached to the handles of bone or wood, which were used to make spears and arrows used by the hunter and gatherers for hunting animals. Other tools made by wood and bone were used to chop wood, which was used as firewood. Wood was also used to make huts and tools. So other stones were used to chopping wood because wood was used as a firewood for various uses during those time. And some tools made by hunter and gatherers were also made by using wood. So as we can see in the picture, there are some stone tools. So left one in the image is used for digging the ground to collect edible roots, and the in the right is used for stitching clothes made out of animal skin. Look at map 2 below. All the places marked with red triangles are the sites from which archaeologists have found evidence of hunter-gatherers. Only some are shown on the map. Many sites were located near sources of water, such as rivers and lakes. So the map 2. There are some important archaeological sites in the map, as you can see many. In index, the sites marked with red triangles like Bhimbetka, Hansgi, Kurnul caves are Paleolithic sites. Sites marked with blue square, Daujali heading, Chirand, Koldiva, Mahagara, Mehegra, Haflu, Burazahom are the Neolithic sites, and sites in green circle like Adhika Mulur, Brahmagiri are megalithic sites. And the violet symbols for Inamda, they are for early villages. and Mumbai, Kolkata with stars are the modern cities. So as you can see, there are three types of sites: Paleolithic, Neolithic, and Megalithic. So this will give you, I will give you information about this in the front slide. So as you can see, there are three ages: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. So the sites found in Paleolithic period are known as Paleolithic sites, in Mesolithic period are known as Mesolithic sites, and some sites discovered in Neolithic period are known as Neolithic sites. So time period: Paleolithic age up to 10,000 years ago. Mesolithic age was started about 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, and Neolithic age about 10,000 to 3,000 years ago. Paleolithic age was also known as Old Stone Age. Mesolithic age was also known as Middle Stone Age, and Neolithic age was also known as New Stone Age. So we'll study about the major characteristics which took place in specific period and significance of specific period. So Paleolithic age, the use of stone tools was started and the evolution. At first, there were basic stone tools. Then they were sharper with flint. Third step was they were added with wooden handle to make axe. Then they were added a shaft and make a spear for hunting animals. Then the gathering of plants, seeds, fruits was started by women in this period. They were cooked with fire. Societies were formed. Cave paintings were a form of art in those periods. Oral languages were created, and people used to migrate from one place to another. People used to live in caves, but the beginning of building shelters was also started in Paleolithic age. So these are characteristics and significance of Paleolithic age. Now Mesolithic age. Ice age ends. More migration. The migration of people increased in this period. New tools like hooks, fishing spears, bow and arrow were made during this period. So as we seen that Paleolithic age people used to live more in caves, but in Mesolithic, better above ground houses were built. People used to travel by rivers and lakes. Pottery, the form of art, was started during this period. And pets were also kept. Pet animals were also kept by the people in this period. Neolithic age. The use of metal was started, and as we see in the title of our chapter, that people were there was a shift from food gathering to food production. That is farming and herding. People started farming and herding, domestication of animals, which was beginning in Southwest Asia for first time. Stay in one place. So people started to stay in one place for a longer period of time. Then there were development of towns, cities, development of religions, and megaliths, nature god, and pray to ancestors. So, religions, example like megalith, nature gods, and praying to ancestors were developed during this period. As stone tools were important, people tried to find places where good quality stone was easily available. So, as we seen that there was a various uses of stone tools for chopping woods, which were used as firewood. It was used for hunting animals by tying it to spear. It was used for cutting meat, removing bark from trees, animal skin. So people tried to find places where good quality stone was easily available for them to make stones. As we have here the information of Bhimbetka. It is present in Madhya Pradesh right now. This is an old site with caves and rock shelters. People choose this natural caves. Yes, it is an old site with caves and rock shelters. Bhimbetka is an UNESCO heritage site. People used to live in this natural caves because it provided them shelter from rain, heat, and wind when there were no houses in those times. These rock shelters are close to Narmada Valley. So, can you think of why people choose to live here? So, as people also used to get the shelter from rain, heat, and wind, and as it was located near Narmada Valley, they also had an easy source of water from where they can get an access to water. So, this image is of a Bhimbetka site. It is an exterior image of how the it caves look. What are sites? Sites are places where the remains of things like tools, pots, buildings, etc. were found. These were made, used, and left behind by people. This may be found on the surface of Earth, buried under the earth, or sometimes even underwater. We will learn more about different sites in last chapter. So, what are sites? So, sites are the places where archaeologists found the remains of tools, pots, buildings, etc. These various tools were made, used by people, and left behind there. So the sites can found under the surface of Earth, buried under the earth, or sometimes these tools are found even underwater. So you'll learn more about sites as we progress in later chapter. Finding out about fire. Find the Kurnul caves on map 2. So as I've shown you, the Kurnul caves is a Paleolithic site. You can see it on a map which I shown before. Traces of ash have been found here. This suggests that people were familiar with the use of fire. So, as archaeologists found the traces of ash in this region, so the suggestion and the thing which we can derive that people were familiar with the use of fire in those times. So, use of fire was for many things. First, it was a source of light. Second, to roast meat, to cook food, and third, and to scare away animals. So these were the three uses of fire in those times. So names and dates, the green box as you can see uh, in this I have explained it already in the differences between three ages, but I'll still read it so that you can understand. Archaeologists have given lengthy names for the time that we are studying. They call the earliest period the Paleolithic. This comes from two Greek words, paleo meaning old and lithos meaning stone. So archaeologists have given names for various periods. So the earliest period of Stone Age is called as Paleolithic Age. So Paleolithic word comes from two Greek words, paleo, which means old, and lithos, which means stone. So name points that there was a lot of importance of stone tools in the Paleolithic period. Paleolithic period is about 12,000 years ago. It is divided into lower, middle, and upper Paleolithic. So Paleolithic period extends from 2 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. This is the timeline. It is a long stretch and divided into three: lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic. And this span covers 99% of human history. So the period when we find environmental changes begins about 12,000 years ago to till 10,000 years ago. It's called Mesolithic, middle stone. Meso means are two Greek words. Meso means middle and lithos means stones. So stone tools which were found during those periods were generally thin and they were called as microliths. Microliths were used to stuck onto handles and used as tools such as saws and sickles. At time, the older variation of stones were also used. The next stage is 10,000 years ago, which is known as Neolithic Age. Changing environment. So, around 12,000 years ago, at the beginning of the Mesolithic Age, major changes occurred in the climate of world with a shift relatively to warm conditions. So, around 12,000 years ago, in the beginning of the Mesolithic Age, a major changes occurred in the climate of a world, and there was a shift to relatively warm conditions. And this shift in warm conditions, changes in climate, led to the development of grasslands. So the development of grasslands, so because of this, there was increase in number of deer, antelope, goat, sheep, and cattle, and domestication of these animals increased because they are animals that survived on grass. So development of grasslands benefited the domestication of these animals. Those who hunted these animals now followed them, learning about their food habits and their breeding seasons. It is likely that this helped people to start thinking about herding and rearing these animals themselves. So the ones who used to hunt animals or used to domesticate these animals, they also started following them, getting more knowledge about them, what are their food habits and their breeding seasons. And this knowledge helped people to start an idea, to start thinking that they themselves can herd and rear animals. And fishing also became important during those times. The beginning of farming and herding. This was also a time when several grain bearing grasses, including wheat, barley, and rice, grew naturally in different parts of the subcontinent. So, in the time, grain bearing grasses such as wheat, barley, rice started to grow in various parts of subcontinent naturally. So, men, women, and children who collected these grains as food and learned. So they started to learn that where they used to grow, when they ripened, and various things. So this knowledge led them to thinking that they can also start to grow plants on their own. In this way, people became farmers. So starting to grow plants on their own was the beginning of people becoming farmers. People could also attract and then tame animals by leaving food for them near their shelters. So people also started to attract and tame animals by leaving the food near their shelters. The first animal to be tamed was the wild ancestor of the dog. So wild ancestor of a dog was the first animal to be tamed. Later, people encouraged animals that were more relatively gentle to come near the camps where they lived. So then people started to encourage or tame animals that were more gentle and they can come near to the camps where people used to live. These animals were sheep, goat, cattle, and also the pig lived in herds, and most of them ate grass. Often people protected these animals from attacks by other wild animals. This is how they become hunters. So when people started to domesticate these animals near their camps, like goat, cattle, sheep, pig, which were gentle to come near the campus. And also people protected these animals from the attacks of wild animals. So in this way, the people also became herders. So the remaining part of this chapter will be covered in a next video. So if you are able to understand something from this video, so please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Thank you for watching.